Oklahoma is going to be a hot button issue in this poll because I am looking where we have them. Yeah, a little bit lower than the AP, but just to give you an idea, if some teams are higher than you think they should be and some teams are lower than you think they should be, it's not about what their record is. I've got Nebraska in the top 25 this week. They are below 500. I got Nebraska above some undefeated teams. All that matters is who we would favor against who on a neutral field based on this model we mentioned so much, has been so good to us over the years, if they play tomorrow. That's all we're caring about here. So having said that, we do have some movement. So let's hop into it and let's take a look at 25 through 21. I mentioned Nebraska. Nebraska, it's been pretty consistent. They're floating right around anywhere from 22 to 28. That's where they've been pretty much all year for us. You may wonder, how can a team below 500 be there? Well, you're looking at them and you're seeing their record. This model looks and it sees a bunch of very, very close losses. The model does not acknowledge the data point 0. The data point of 0, like for instance in the world of temperatures, if it's -1 or if it's +1, that's all the difference in the world because it's below 0 or above 0. In the world of liquid, the difference between 31 and 33 makes all the difference in the world. You could have it 33 all day. It's not going to freeze water. 31, it's going to freeze water. In this model's world, it does not care about the point of 0. If I beat you 33 to 31, I'm 1-0, you're 0-1. All the model sees is just 2 points difference. That's all it sees. So Nebraska's lost a bunch of close games, so they get punished in their record. In this kind of future predictive modeling, it doesn't really matter whether they won the games or lost the games. It only matters just a little bit. So that's why Nebraska's still there. NC State's down a couple of spots at 24. Texas is still here. You got to understand something about these underachieving but really talented teams. When it comes to odds making, that stuff matters. It matters how talented your roster is when it comes to point spreads. So it's harder to knock the Clemsons or the Texases or the Floridas out of the top 25. Having said that, Clemson is out of the top 25. What do we have? We got Oklahoma State up 4 spots to number 21. You notice that, do you? Oklahoma State was barely rated for us. They lost a game, but because they lost to our, I'm going to spoil it for you, our number 8 team in their building, and they lost by only 3, that's good to bump you up in power rating land. So Oklahoma State's at number 21. All right, let's go top 20 here. Arkansas's at 20. They're down 3 spots. That's largely because there was movement around them. Kentucky's still at 19. Baylor has jumped a couple of spots to 18. And Arizona State, Michigan State have dropped a couple of spots. Again, it's not because of anything they did. Michigan State was off last week. It's because we had some movement elsewhere. And there are very small margins. In this part of the power rating, you've got like 4 or 5 points that are separating number 8 through number 20. So it's very, very small margins. That's why you see some movement like that. Top 15 is as follows. Number 15, the Iowa Hawkeyes. Probably the biggest victim last week, even though it was through no fault of their own. We just had some teams improve their own grade, and they jumped Iowa. Iowa's down 5 spots. They're number 15. Oregon really respected the result there at UCLA. Oregon, according to the model, up 4 spots. Notre Dame's up a few spots to number 13. Notre Dame's probably got a second half run in them here. Pitt's down 1 to 12, even though they beat Clemson. Again, it's not punishing Pitt. There are teams that moved ahead of them. Penn State is number 11. Penn State, we got a hard time with them right now. We dropped them 5 spots. The model is screaming that it thinks with a fully healthy Sean Clifford, Penn State is still a top 10 team. The problem is, how do you measure how healthy a quarterback was last week? I don't know. I don't think Sean Clifford was 100%. But then we're starting to inject a whole lot of opinion and gut into this thing, and that's not really what we want. So we got Penn State at 11. Now take a look at number 10. Number 10, a team that was left for dead, by me included, Texas A&M is all the way back inside the top 10. What the model is seeing is just the same thing I told you. Supremely talented roster, but now quarterback is starting to come through for them. There are 3 consecutive results now. The Alabama game, the Missouri game, and the South Carolina game where they either met or exceeded model expectations. And so it acknowledges that. It's bumping them up. It's really the kind of the crux of the way it works. Auburn is number 9. They're up 3 spots. As a 2-loss team, they were off last week, so obviously a result of movement around them. Iowa State, still a top 10 team, sitting at number 8. Number 7 is Oklahoma. Now let's talk about this for a second. Oklahoma, they are kind of the inverse of Nebraska. Oklahoma has won a bunch of close games. Nebraska has lost a bunch of close games. We've got Oklahoma ranked down at 7. I think the AP has them much higher. We got them at 7. This is the first time that the model has started to punish them a little bit more after they rocketed back up to number 3. And it's because we're starting to look at teams like Cincy, which is number 6, by the way. And this is the first time that the model would actually slightly favor Cincy on a neutral field against Oklahoma. Again, I think Oklahoma's best football is ahead of them, and I do think there's going to come a time where maybe they move back up into the top 5. But it's not the present team. And we cannot keep in week 8, 9, and 10 just expecting that a switch is about to be flipped. That's the kind of stuff that maybe you said about Clemson after week 1. Oh, they'll get their act together. Well, they never did, but it was reasonable to at least think that. So that's why Oklahoma's down. Top 5 is got some movement. Michigan's at number 5. Now, I got to tell you, I'd be hard-pressed to be picking Michigan over Oklahoma on a neutral tomorrow. I'd be hard-pressed to do that. But I do understand the model's reasoning, so I'm not going to argue with it really, really strongly. Ole Miss is our biggest differentiator. It has been. They have been for quite a while. We got Ole Miss at number 4. Hate the dynamic for them this week. I think they're going to lose this week. I got news for you. If they go into Auburn and they lose by 1 possession, they probably won't even drop, because that's exactly what our model expects them to do. And so the same model that's got them at 4 expects them to lose by 5. So if that were to happen, their grade by default would remain unchanged. Ohio State is 3, Bama is 2, Georgia is 1. I will tell you the gap that didn't really exist to begin with between Ohio State and Alabama, it's razor thin. It's less than a point. There is, I think, 2 points now. It's like right at 2 points that separate Georgia and Alabama. So we have got a really tight 1 through 3. There is a sizable drop-off between 3 and 4. And then it's pretty much jumbled, which is fun. It's fun to look at. The question becomes, is there going to be a bridge built? And how many bridges can be built between these teams that are outside of that top 3 and the top 3? Or are those top 3 just going to pull away? And also, should be noted that even though there is some separation with 1, 2, 3 versus the rest of the pack, it's not the kind of separation we've seen in recent years. In other words, if I had 2020 Alabama in this year, there would be a gap between 2020 Alabama and number 1 Georgia. There would be a gap between 2019 LSU and number 1 Georgia. So just because I'm telling you there's a big gap between these top teams and then the second tier, it doesn't make that top tier invincible. That's not the year we're in. And if you think we've gone through all this chaos to just have a completely tranquil November, I think you're kidding yourself.